Hey everyone, it's Lisa Chastain. I'm back live on the WCOBM. Geeks Are Sexy. Hello, Michelle Davis. Thank you for let me take over today for the Money is Sexy show. And I'm here with one of my best friends, Jeremy Edgel. It's 420. Did you guys know it was 420?
Absolutely.
Who doesn't know it's 420? You know it's 420, right? Kind of like a national holiday in the world.
For my industry, it really is.
It really is, right?
It really is.
It's a holiday that so many people know about, even if they don't partake in cannabis. For me, it was always a Bob Marley kind of holiday. But I'm grateful that you're on today because of one. We'll just share a little bit about our background. We've known each other for 30 years. I want to say
30 something. Yeah, 30 31 something.
Right. We've known each other for a really long time. We grew up about a mile down the street from each other.
Walking distance for me.
Walking distance, went to elementary school, middle school, high school, all that, and we reconnected. And I didn't really know that you were such an expert in the cannabis space. So walk me through your journey. How did you get involved in the cannabis world? You're an expert now, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what's your journey? What's your path? How did you get started? And we'll go from there.
It was really kind of by accident, right? So like my passion was politics and trying to change the world, right? So that sounds like super lame.
Super cheesy.
But trying to change the world, doing good stuff for people, right? And so I thought that only way to do that was through politics. So I got a lot of people elected, and in 2015 became a chief of staff in our state legislature.
Wow.
Which happened to be the same cycle as medical marijuana.
Okay.
So that cycle, we had collected enough signatures to make it recreational. But we had a Republican majority, and...
What does that mean? So there are a lot of people that are really interested in that, but don't pay attention to politics, so what does that mean?
Okay, so whoever is in the majority runs the show. So if the Republicans are in majority, then they run the Senate and they run the House. And they decide what bills get on the floor and what bills don't.
Makes sense. I mean, I know that, but we just know we have a lot of viewers
Certainly.
who may don't know that, so, okay.
And so I was just part of the conversation. I represented 5 elects that cycle, and so it was just a matter of really revealing to them that I also had a legal medical marijuana grow at my home at the same time as being a chief of staff.
Okay, all right, so pause there. How many of you watching would not admit the same thing, right? But that's what people have done for years and years and years, is they have their own...
It was legal.
It was legal.
It was the only legal way to do it.
Okay.
Then. And so during that session, we created the medical marijuana laws. And we created it from like an illegal black market charity standpoint, right, to like an actual tax code.
Okay.
So then in July, we saw Euphoria open down here. We saw Sierra Wellness open up north. And those were the first 2 dispensaries that we created a tax code for. And so I got involved in the cannabis space just because I knew about it, right? Like there was only a handful of people that were involved in the process of passing the laws.
Okay.
And then my friends saw that I was an expert, right? And so they started hiring me to lobby for their interests.
Okay.
And I didn't really consider myself an expert, right, until recently, until there's enough zeros involved to where I say, okay, I guess I am an expert then.
And someone's going to pay me for that. You know, the consulting business across the field is a very lucrative business. But even before we talk about that, like what Envy Grown, right? Or how do you, what's your name?
Hashtag Envy Grown Consulting.
Envy Grown Consulting. We'll talk about that, but how do politics relate to all of this? Because you were in politics, you helped the law pass, but after that, like, okay, so it's legal. What does that have to do with anything anymore? Is it really legal? I mean, we know that there's a lot of federal stuff going on right now. I'm definitely not the expert, which is why I'm asking you, because you're the expert. So it's legal to smoke it at home, but it's not, like, what does all of that mean?
So the consumption laws aren't sorted out yet.
Okay.
The legal way to consume cannabis is in your home. It's not in the resort district, which means right now...
Las Vegas Boulevard, so you can't
Las
do it
Vegas
on
Boulevard, a mile in each direction. Right now, as we speak, thousands, if not tens of thousands of tourists are violating the law right now.
Okay.
But we haven't taken it from an NAC, which is like a recommended set of guidelines and rules, into an NRS, a Nevada Revised Statute, to where it's an actual law. Then we create penal code, meaning penalties for breaking these laws.
Okay, so there's none of that yet.
There's none of that yet.
There's a lot of gray area.
There's a ton of gray area.
Hearing you
cannabis.
speak, it just sounds like it's the wild, wild west still.
It absolutely is.
Like there's kind of a law, but the federal government isn't regulating it because it's not really legal, or it is illegal federally. So how are people navigating this? How are business owners navigating this landscape right now?
There's two different groups, right? So there's a group that's in it for a one-time kind of deal where they will make one business transaction and that's all they expect to do.
Okay, so people who just want to get in it to make money. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and they don't really care who they step on in the process because there's nobody
watching them.
Not,
or what?
Yeah, sort of.
Kind of, okay.
Yeah, I mean there's a Department of Taxation that regulates it, but there really is no entity that enforces those rules yet. Right? So groups that I'm working with, I'm calling it the Canadian invasion, right? Because there's like all these publicly traded Canadian companies that are coming to Nevada specifically to get involved in this space.
Right.
Because it's perfectly legal in Canada. They have all the banking resolved.
Got it.
They have it's legitimate business.
Right.
So like you see the Queen on the money, right? In Canada, they have the Bank of Canada, the Royal Bank of Canada, does cannabis transactions, right? Which sounds insane for us.
Yeah, we don't see that here. So it's heavily a cash industry. What does that mean?
It creates a lot of problems, right? So we call it the legacy cash, right? Of all the people that are in this city and in LA and all these other cities that have millions in what we call legacy cash, just stashed in their house.
Oh, legacy.
Waiting to deposit it.
Oh, okay.
Because they can't deposit it yet.
It sounds really dangerous.
It is not very wise for us not to have banking.
No. What do you see the future of banking for cannabis? What do you see that being?
So in all this stuff, right, like people like myself and people a lot smarter than me think tank this out, right? And so in 2015 we passed a bill, AB 480, William Horn carried it. William Horn is an attorney here in Las Vegas.
Okay.
He's lobbied more cannabis bills than anybody else successfully. And he passed AB 480, which allows the state of Nevada to opt out of the Fed. So we can create essentially a credit union that isn't insured by the federal government.
Right.
And then on January 18th, a congresswoman of our state passed a similar bill on the federal side to allow us to do that. So I sincerely believe in this year, 2018, we'll have banking resolved in cannabis.
Banking will be resolved. So what does that mean for the consumer? So it's 420.
It
right?
is.
And you're like, oh
all
my
day
gosh,
long.
people are driving so slow in town.
All day long. I've been like, what is going on? And then I realized, oh yeah, we're
It's
recreational. Everybody's waiting for stop signs to turn green.
They're just waiting. They're hanging out. They're not speeding or anything. What does that mean for the consumer? So is weed more expensive, less expensive with the federal banking? Well, with the feds coming around eventually, or banking coming around eventually, what does that mean for them? So a lot of my viewers and clients might consume it, and what I've noticed is it's actually pretty expensive to consume.
Yeah.
So with all these different changes coming down the pike, what could that mean for them?
So there's a long-term game, right? So I mean, everybody in any capitalistic society wants to be number one, right?
Of course,
so we have Budweiser that, because of antitrust laws in our country, pretend they don't own Miller, Coors, Corona, Heineken, all the other brands.
Sure.
But they actually do for the rest of the world.
Right.
So cannabis we see will end up the same way. So we anticipate in the next 12 months that the big players, the top 5, will cut their prices in half. And so you'll see the market drop drastically in the next 12 months to choke out the smaller guys. But it's economics 101, the prices go back up. Once the mergers and acquisitions have happened, then the monopoly gets to set the price at whatever Budweiser costs right now.
Right.
Is the price that Budweiser wants it to be.
Right.
Because they own the other value brands. They own the ISAT. They own it all.
Right.
So it ends up the same way. In the immediate, it's more expensive than it is black market.
Yeah.
But it's tested.
Safer. It's safer.
It's safer. It's considerably safer. Like for certain, and we had issues with labs not participating the right way. But we've resolved all that, we believe. And the labs now are a lot more reliable than they were 6 months ago.
Absolutely. So, I'm a part of NABO, which is the National Association of Women Business Owners, and we had the an attorney from, what do we call it, the Nevada Dispensary Association come in and talk to us and really educate us about this, they call it seed to sale.
Yep, seed to sell software. Yep.
And there's a software where from the time it's grown to the time it's sold, that there's a tracking system, so we know more so where it's coming from, and it's coming from safer environments, whatever that means. I don't know. So what is it? What is a safe environment? What is a
All right,
safe
so there's
product?
mold. There's mold.
Okay.
All right, so that's the danger of cannabis, is that mold is not good for anybody, right? Like they'll tear down an entire development because of mold, right? Cannabis is the same way.
course.
So imagine that
Okay.
you're ingesting that mold now, but you add a combustible, you add flame to it, right?
Okay.
Not good for you.
Okay.
In Canada, they had a publicly traded company that went under because they poisoned like 7,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the goal, is that the testing prevents this sort of thing from happening.
Right. Right. So that's the benefit of regulation.
It is.
It is.
It is.
It is. So tell me about your consulting company. What is it that you actually do for clients? I know that you're an expert in this space, and I know that you're consulting clients on different fronts. What is it that someone watching this, you can tell them about what you do and how you're helping? So you're not really doing politics anymore, but how are you helping still move the needle forward?
All right, so in March of last year, my grandma died, and I really felt that if she had had medical cannabis, her quality of life would have been higher, right? And so I got involved in the space really because I felt a lot of guilt there. And I really think there's a lot of good that can be done in cannabis if people want it to.
I think a lot of people believe the same thing, right?
People do, right? But the business models
Sure,
don't necessarily.
sure.
And so I have a company called For Fairness in Cannabis that I started in November.
Mm-hmm.
That really is just exactly as it sounds. Like, I want to see fair things happen. Like, everybody's concern with legal weed was that money laundering, gangsters, like all the things we thought weed was before, right?
Right.
So I want to help the average American that invests their life savings in legal weed because they believe it's going to make them rich, at least break even. Right?
Got it. Because that's the other thing. There's a lot of hype and there's a lot of information about all the money that is being made in the cannabis space, but there are a lot of people that are not
making money.
And they're not just losing little bits of money, they're losing
Over
millions.
100 million so far.
Over 100 million. So you're out there saying, hey, let me watch out across the board and help protect people, even people who don't know what they're doing.
It's a lot of the people that I'm protecting who don't know what they're doing,
Right.
against those who do know what they're doing.
Right. How do they get a hold of you? How would they start to work with you?
I mean, anybody can email me at nvgrownconsulting@gmail.com.
Okay.
Or go to my Facebook page, NV Grown Consulting, the @ NV Grown Consulting.
Sure.
But really, it's just through referrals. I mean, the cannabis space is a really tight-knit community, and then
Yep.
people see results. Like on this last client, they had over $8 million in liens and a lot of legal problems that we got resolved all the way down to a clean title
Right.
at the point of sale.
Right.
And so that's taking 18 Nevada investors that knew nothing about cannabis and really just giving them their investment back. It's saving them from losing their life savings.
Yeah, I hear you. So what would you say? So there are average investors, there are a lot of people who want to get into this space, for a lot of my following and for people who are interested in investing but don't know a lot about it investing. What do they need to know before they put their life savings into any type of cannabis investment? What do they need to know? What's important?
So everybody thinks that growing weed is easy because it's
Yeah.
called a weed,
Right?
right? So we think that weeds grow in our yards or plants we don't want, they just grow automatically.
Right.
Not the case with cannabis. It is a very sensitive plant. It has a temperature range of about 8 degrees that it prospers in. It's very, very, very finicky.
Okay.
Right. So my advice is that if people want to invest in the cannabis space, that they do a ton of research on the operators that are running their grows,
Okay.
and that it is a publicly traded company that has to be audited.
A publicly traded, and there are plenty of publicly traded companies out there, right?
U.S. and Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a ton of them.
Got it.
And so through the auditing process that's required to be publicly traded, you can kind of vet out, and then look at what they've produced to make sure that they've actually produced that. Because I've seen a lot of companies that have raised capital and keep raising and keep taking from their stockholders but don't produce anything.
Okay.
So for the folks at home, right, the thing you want to do is just make sure they're producing a profit and that it is monitored either by the Canadian government or by the United States government.
Right.
And the feds are not coming anytime soon. Like, that's the
Okay.
biggest misconception people have.
Right. What is that? So speak more into that. We've got a few more minutes. What does that really mean? So.
All right, so the
Feds.
people making money in cannabis
Yeah.
are people like myself, attorneys, support companies but not the operators just yet.
Okay.
It's the government. So we're looking at a tax code of, let's say, a cultivator, which means somebody who just grows the flower, right? They don't make pre-rolls or brownies, or that's another license called a production license.
Okay.
And they don't have a dispensary license, which means
Okay.
a for-sale license.
I learned something about, it's called, they're vertically integrated.
Yeah.
When you have the ability to grow and sell,
Yeah.
right? So you're just talking about the growers.
Just the growers.
Okay.
They're looking at a 53% tax code per dollar.
53%. That's worse.
35.
That's worse than California.
It really is. Well, with California, you'd add 10 more.
Yeah, because there's state tax on
Yeah.
top of that, right? Okay.
35 of that goes to the federal government in cash.
Wow.
They're not stopping anything anytime soon.
All right. So this is the next question then. What the heck is the government doing with all this cash? And it's mostly cash. What's the government doing with it?
So at a hearing, our next governor,
Uh-huh.
Mr. Commissioner Steve Sisolak,
Yep.
asked one of the gals, have you ever had a month where you've received over $1 million in cash? And she said yes. Have you ever received a month where you've received over $10 million in cash? She said yes.
In cash. Cash. Like
Cash,
stacks
currency,
of cash.
duffel bags,
Okay.
briefcases.
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Lunch bags, whatever analogy you want to use.
However it comes.
Right? Quarters, pennies, whatever.
Sure.
What's being done with it? I don't know. You know, that's not my job anymore.
Well, I know a lot of it was earmarked for education in Nevada. When will we as taxpayers really understand the breadth of that? When will we start to see the impact of those dollars coming in?
That's a question for your elected officials because.
Oh, good way to avoid that. Yeah.
Well, no, in my
It is.
opinion,
You're not.
if you go to YouTube at faircan.org, you'll see an interview. I interviewed Isaac Barone, City Councilman, North Las Vegas, and that money was supposed to go to education.
Yeah.
Now it's going to the general fund.
Whatever the heck that means. So what does
It
that
means
mean?
the general coffers for the whole state,
Uh-huh.
and then it's supposed to get back to education.
Somehow, some way.
But what we've learned, or what I've seen, once it goes in the general fund,
Goodbye.
yeah.
Good riddance. Good
Yeah.
riddance. All right. So there are a lot of you watching, and I hope you learned something about what's going on in the state of Nevada and what's going on countrywide with cannabis. Since it's 420, I thought we'd have an intellectual conversation about it instead of light up. But we know this is something, I know that I have a lot of people in my network, people who are really paying attention to this as an investment for monetary reasons, for economic reasons, political reasons. There's really a huge future in this industry. So thank you for bringing it down a little bit and helping us understand some of these complicated, very complicated systems and the way that it's working throughout the state of Nevada. And I know we'll be hearing more from you sooner than later, and bringing on other experts. So thanks for joining the Money is Sexy show.
Absolutely. Been
All
a
right.
fan for quite some time.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about you for just a minute. What do you love about money? Because we always have to talk about that on my show. What do you love about money?
The smell of it.
The smell of money?
The crispness of it.
Okay. Okay.
You know, the things it can buy is fun, but just the security of it, right? And so I'm on the precipice of some really big things.
Mm-hmm.
And so at different points in my life, you know, I had worldly things.
Right.
And now I don't see value in those worldly things. Now I see value in other things.
Right.
Now I see value in money markets for kids and education and other things. But
Sure.
to me, money is just security.
It is.
Money's just lets me do what I want to do. Lets me wear a T-shirt and flip-flops every day if I want to.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom. I know a lot of that works for you. A lot of you are watching this and that, and for my clients and the millennial generation and Victoria who's watching and all of you who are watching, thanks for joining in. But money is freedom.
It is.
And I believe that. When I interview clients time and time again, we get to the heart of it and they say, it's going to give me the time that I want to spend the time with the people that I love. And so that's why money is important. It's not as important so much as it gives you in exchange for time. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Cool. Come back.
I will.
All right,
Most
we'll talk
definitely.
more. If you're watching and you have questions, type in. We can see you as you jump on live. Let us know what questions you have. We'll be happy to respond. And again, where can people find you?
At NV Grown Consulting.
.com.
On Facebook,
On
NV Grown
Facebook?
Consulting, or NV Grown Consulting at Gmail.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Cool. Well, that's the end of my segment. It's Money is Sexy on the Geeks Are Sexy show. Shout out to Michelle Davis. Thanks for letting me take over your space today. Talk about money. Special shout out to Glenda Compton, who is an amazing health and wellness expert. You know how to find her. She's in segment 1 of today's show. Look out for us on YouTube, Geeks Are Sexy, and I'm Lisa Chastain in Las Vegas on 420. So grateful you took the afternoon to spend with me, and we'll catch you next time. I will be back actually the first week of May, where I'll have some more amazing guests, and I can't wait to see you then. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Happy 420.
Happy 420.